All right, everybody, welcome back to the Feeling Your Passion podcast. We're already on episode 12.
12?
Yeah.
A dozen.
It took 12 episodes to get the one and only Stephen Clark here. Stephen, there's a lot of people that have no idea who you are.
Yep.
There's a lot of people that know are offended that people don't know who you are. Your claim to fame, first and foremost, before we dive into what your actual career is you are the world's best Scottish snowmobiler.
As far as we know, I've never found another Scottish snowmobiler yet. I'm not that good of a snowmobiler, but when I'm on the only one, it's kind of by default.
I can't argue with you on that. No. I've never met one either.
And we so bummed if like Hamish comes ripping through the trees someday.
Yeah.
Dude, leave.
Stephen, you and I can get into it on our history together, but present day, you're freelance right now, right?
Freelance, yep. So snowmobile filmer, photographer, other power sports.
We've done a little bit of everything from big corporate gigs to fun one-off shoots.
Yep, big stuff, little stuff. Yeah, it's been cool. I've been working pretty much full-time on my own since like 2006.
Wow, that's a grind. A lot of people don't understand that when you aren't having a 9-to-5 salary position, it's up to you to get work.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few like longer term contracts in that time, right, but essentially been making a living with a camera since 2006. So that's cool. I'm pretty pumped about it.
Yeah. And we're sitting in your brand new shop you're currently building.
New shop here in Driggs, which is
Life's
exciting.
Good. Life's good. Yeah, Stephen and I met, just to give the listeners a little background, in 2014 or 15.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
It was at Snow Shoot in West Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
And
you're doing like sled ed 24/7.
Yeah. And basically, long story short, if it wasn't for Stephen, I would not be sitting here right now doing this podcast or anything with 509. I owe a lot of that to you, Stephen.
I don't know about that.
You gave me a shot, and here we are today.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we had some fun in those early days because you kind of came on that first year we did those Yamaha shoots.
Oh, I think I chose to forget about those.
Yeah, I raised those. But 509 like films produced the Yamaha corporate shoots for a couple of years. And then you came on for that. And then we liked you. So you came on like the heli shoot maybe?
Yep, volume 10.
Yep. And then from there, then I kind of moved on, did some different stuff, and then you kind of took it over from there. So it's been cool.
I want to get into talking the sled stuff with you, but I really want to know how the hell a guy from Scotland ends up in America and then ends up falling in love riding snowmobiles.
Yeah. So I grew up in Scotland, and I was super into dirt bikes, rode mountain bikes and stuff as a kid. And then in 1995, my brother married a girl from Texas that had family in Idaho, and their extended family were the Clausens that started Bully Dog. So they were kind of big snowmobile guys. So I used to come over in the winter and got introduced to snowmobiles, and we'd go ride Yamahas, and thought that was really cool. And then I'd come over in the summer and ride dirt bikes in Idaho and just kind of like fell in love with the lifestyle. And then 5 years later, me and my parents moved to California, and then I moved to Idaho and kind of went on from there.
So you started in Texas though? Is that what you said?
No, my brother's wife, Heather, she's from Texas.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I spent a ton of my childhood in Idaho.
Yeah.
So Idaho was always kind of like a second home.
When was the first time you got on a sled?
Super funny story. So me and my parents came to Jackson Hole in 1994, and we went to Togedy, and back up a little bit of story. A little bit before that, I was down in Aberdeen, and like there's like a lot of farming down there, and I was riding a little ATC 3-wheeler, and I crashed into a fence and broke my wrist. But I was previously coming off of another broken wrist, and we were on vacation, and my parents were like so pissed. They're like, we're not like taking you to the hospital, just deal with it. So we go to Jackson, and then we go to Togedy, and we rent this like Indy 2-up, and I have like a broken wrist, and I remember going with my dad and like riding 2-up, and we couldn't figure out how to make it go around corners. And I distinctly remember like guys on like old like mod sleds like ripping across the road out of Togedy, and I remember like we're like standing up, and I'm like, those guys are so cool. So that was like my first introduction, and then it was a pretty terrible experience overall, but it was like a taster. And then I never went back to Togedy until I got my job at American Snowmobiler magazine, and like one of my first assignments was to go to Togedy, and we did a Pink Ribbon Riders thing. And I remember being there, I'm like, this is kind of surreal. Like last time I was here, I was 12 years old, had never seen a snowmobile before. And then somehow now I'm like 26 years old, and I like have a job as a magazine editor, like riding snowmobiles for a living. I'm like, that was cool.
One of those little full circle moments.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And then, so 509 came into play. Let's see. You met Tom when the company was kind of still in its infancy a bit, huh?
Yeah, I think it was like 2011, 2012. So up to that point, I'd been doing a ton of like magazine work. So I would go take photographs and write an article, and I'd sell it to magazines. So I'd like for Diesel Power and some snowmobile magazines, and I'd like sell this package. And it was like pretty good gig. I'd like go do a little story, drive around my car, take some pictures. And then magazines started to have trouble. 2008 came, the recession kind of came. And then social media came on board. And I remember being like, it was this like aha moment. I'm like, well, I can pretty much keep doing the same thing I've been doing, but instead of like selling it to magazines, I'll just like sell this content to these companies. So I'm like, these companies now have this page they have to fill with content. And I didn't really know much about it other than I knew there was like going to be a need there. So I started like messing around with Facebook a little bit. And then I met Tom at the Denver Snowmobile Show. And Tom was like, oh, I'm trying to like figure this whole thing out. And I'm going to like hire a PR agency. But nobody knows anything about snowmobiling. And I'm like, well, I can take pictures and write captions. Let's figure it out. So we did. And we started like, it was a really cool time and probably one of the most exciting points in my career because Tom had a lot of vision for like how this was going to work, but he was too busy running the business to like create any content or like really do much with it. So Tom he kind of launched it with, I think he did some contest and you could like win a GoPro. And that kind of like got the ball rolling, and we got like a few hundred followers, like 1,000 followers, and we're kind of like limping along. And then I was like, can I go to X Games and like take pictures of X Games? That would be cool. And Tom's like, yeah, sure. So I had a buddy, my buddy Tyler, and he knew somebody in X Games in Aspen, and we like stayed at this house. And I remember going out there, and I'd shoot an event, and I'd like literally pull the camera out of the card, big CF Express card, and like run to the media center and jam it in the laptop as quick as possible and like upload these pictures and put them on this Facebook page. And something happened around that time where it just went viral. And that was before Facebook had any advertising. It was all organic.
Media.
There was no paid. And we kind of sort of tracked it back to like either a picture of Joe Parsons or it was like a close-up of like the 509 aviator goggle on ESPN. But something around there like sparked this fire, and it went bananas. And I remember like talking with Tom, and Tom's like, what are you doing on the Facebook page? And I'm like, I don't know. What are you doing on the Facebook page? Because like 10 minutes ago, it had 20,000 followers. Now it has 22,000 followers. And then it went to like 50,000 and then 100,000. And then in a pretty short period of time, the 509 Facebook page had more followers than like Arctic Cat, Ski-Doo, Yamaha, Polaris all added together.
Yeah.
And like the industry kind of started taking notice. They're like, wait, how did these goggle guys like kind of take over this whole media thing? So yeah, it was super cool to be a part of that.
Was that the same year that they had the booth at X Games? The 509 had the booth?
No.
So the following year?
The following year.
Yeah.
So like, it was like such a thing that Tom was like, oh man,
run
we should,
with the momentum.
Yeah, we got to go back there. So the whole 509 team came, and they had the little like claw grabber thing, like for
with
like
goggles in it.
with goggles, and people would line up and they could like grab the goggles, and I think you had to like the Facebook page. But it was super exciting because it was like in those days it was literally Tom, and then he had people helping him like seasonally. But it was really fun for me because I could be like, if I had an idea, I'd be like, hey Tom, what do you think of this? Be like, oh sweet, go for it, and now you just run with it. Whereas I don't know how your experience is now, but as businesses get bigger, there's more checks and balances and more people and meetings, and it slows down the process in a way.
Yeah.
In those days, it was like we just kind of ran with it.
I caught the tail end of that kind of era. Obviously, it's grown a ton in the last 4 years, I'd say, for the most part.
Yeah.
But when I first started, it was still kind of that core, that from the roots still group.
Yeah.
Where I was just bouncing ideas off Tom. Like I didn't really have a marketing team or anything. And he was just, sure, sounds good, run with it. And it was fun to be able to experience that because I totally know what you're talking about. Like when Tom likes an idea, he doesn't push back on your opinion on it.
Yeah.
He might give a little bit of feedback, but he like trusts your judgment on it.
For sure, and just lets you run with it.
Which is fun because then you have the creative control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in those days, it was cool because like Tom was like the king of like fake it till you make it kind of mentality. Like 509 would go to heydays with like a massive semi trailer and a Volvo truck, and it was like Tom would buy this old stuff and put cool stickers all over it, and like nobody even knew what the stickers were stuck to. They're just like, "Whoa, look at the 509 semi,
covering up
sick."
rust."
Yeah, and it was like, and Tom's like over there, like, "Yeah, that Volvo truck costs less than my pickup. But he will think it's cool." So he had this like outward like appearance of this massive company, and then it was like literally like a warehouse, not much bigger than the shop that we were in, that was like full of goggles. And even before that, I think Tom was like shipping goggles out of his like living room.
So you started with primarily picture stuff for 509.
Yeah, so we did that for a while, and then Phil Wybar was filming the movie.
Yeah. So would that have been like volume 7 time?
Volume 7.
Yeah.
And then I filmed a little bit of stuff for volume 7. And then we kind of kept working on some stuff, and then Phil kind of went in another direction. And then in like the fall of the next year, I went to Tom, was like, I really want to film the movie. And Tom was like, okay, like, do you know how to do that? And I'm like, oh, I'm probably trying to figure it out. And I did some stuff and showed him, and he's like, okay, like, and I don't think Tom felt that great about it. And I was pretty nervous too, but I'm like, let's figure this out, which was fine. The kicker was they had this red camera, and this red camera was a nightmare. It was like, red cameras are still tricky to use, but this one wasn't set up very well for what we were trying to do.
I think it's the same one I still had when I started.
Probably. We had the big 4 battery brick on the back.
Yeah, and they lasted for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that made the learning curve so steep. And that season was really tough. Mike Reeve came on that same season, and Mike will probably watch this, but me and Mike had a bit of a tough relationship the first year, because Mike was like coming into this and he's like, I'm going to make a name for myself and I'm going to make a killer movie. And then Tom was like, well, you're going to work with this Steven guy. And Mike's like, okay. So Mike was like putting me through the ringer. Like,
he'd been shooting sled necks already, hadn't he?
Yeah, and he was way more experienced than I was.
Yeah.
So I'd like shoot stuff and send it, and then Mike would be like, nope, not going to cut it. And that, what was really hard about that year is I went to X Games and like was shooting, and Caleb Moore like literally died in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
Like, and that was super upsetting to go through that whole weekend and that whole turmoil. And then I come out of that, I'm like, what am I doing? I've got this red camera, like people are dying. Mike's just, every time I talk to him, be like, those guys got to go bigger. Like, why are those American writers not hitting bigger stuff? Like, we got to shoot like big stuff. I'm like, dude, like, we're trying. Like, I'm like, I just watched this guy die, and now you're telling me we got to shoot bigger stuff. I'm like,
pump the brakes.
Yeah, and that was really hard to like kind of get through those blocks, and we kind of stumbled through it. And then we went to Canada for the heli shoot, and me and Mike kind of like bonded, I would say, during the heli shoot, and we like worked together. We had a really good heli shoot. We shot a bunch of big stuff, and then it was kind of like Mike, that was like my like rite of passage with Mike. Like, I think after that, Mike was like, all right, like, you're good, you know, I'll quit busting your balls about everything. Like, well, let's just make some movies. Yeah.
Nerve-wracking time. I mean, you're still fairly new to the industry, definitely new to the film side, right? You'd been you've been shooting stills and writing articles pretty much up until that time. And you guys were kind of, the way I look at it, were kind of the test dummies of social media for this industry.
Yeah.
You guys were just experimenting with new things, kind of just throwing photos and clips at a wall and seeing what sticks and takes off.
So we were doing that, but we had this behemoth of a movie to make too. Yeah. And the movie thing was a was the amount of work. I mean, you did a few of those movies, but
Yeah.
it was like, it's one thing, like the YouTube stuff's awesome, but the YouTube stuff that we're creating these days, a lot of times we're just documenting what's happening during a day.
In like a 2 or 3 day time span.
Right.
Yeah.
Good or bad, you shoot it, you put it together, everybody's laughing, high-fiving, having a good time. When it was shooting a movie, you needed like super deep snow, bluebird days, guys hitting really big stuff, and you had to get this whole thing done in a season.
Mm-hmm.
So if the weather wasn't cooperating and the riders weren't hitting stuff.
And it's like 12 riders.
Right.
That you're trying to fill 5-minute time slots for each.
And the riders are awesome, but like everybody wants a good segment. Not everybody was like super pumped on what it took to actually do that.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a different mentality. And I would say overall, the Canadian riders were more piped into that process than the American riders. And it really, because a lot of the American riders, they have more stuff, more other things going on. Like the guys are doing clinics and teaching and racing, and they're a movie segment wasn't their primary focus, whereas some of the Canadian guys, that was their focus. So yeah, I'm very thankful we got through those days without any major catastrophes.
Yeah, from the outside looking in, you just see this polished product. You know, you show up at the premiere and everybody hangs out, has some beers and meets the riders and high fives, but like you were saying, to produce those segments, it's not like we go plan a 7-day trip and get everything done. I remember some days with you and I when we were working together, and I'm sure you and Mike dealt with this constantly also, of days where you couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
You're just, Mother Nature's fighting you. Mm-hmm. Either riders are gassed or they're tired, or some guys will get in a mood, as you know, and just like not feel it that day. But you kind of got to respect that because they're pushing their limits.
Yeah,
if they're going 150 feet in the backcountry, they're not feeling it.
Yeah.
Even though you just drove 12 hours to go meet up with them, you got to respect that, hey, they're not feeling it right now.
Yeah.
But then it's a catch-22. It's like, okay, if they're not feeling it, I don't know when one of us is going to be able to get back up here and complete this segment.
Yeah.
And then they're bummed their segment's not good, and then, or we're driving again and trying to make a second trip. There's just so many variables in it when you're trying to capture that many riders.
And then as the season goes on, the snow's getting worse and worse and worse, and your deadline is coming closer and closer. And then you're at the point where you're like just trying to do something, and then you're driving to Canada in May. Yeah. And you're like, oh my gosh, do we really need to be doing this? And
you really have a 3-month window to do 10 to 12 segments.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the one thing about snowmobiling that, from a writing perspective and a documenting perspective, is like makes it so like good and bad. Like snowmobiling is either really on and absolutely fantastic, or it's pretty dang miserable. Like, like if you got a deep day and it's sunny, like it's epic. And if it's gray and the snow's old, it sucks. Mm-hmm. Summer sports aren't like that near as much. Like summer sports, shooting and riding, it's like, it's most likely going to be sunny. The dirt's going to be sometimes a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse, but not near the variable you have in snow. So,
and you're warm. That's the main thing. You're not freezing your ass off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole topic in itself, just dealing with cameras and that in those. They've got a lot better now in present day, but I remember we would just eat through batteries. Old GoPros, those old FS700 Sonys, like
for sure,
they would drain in the cold. And I remember putting like hand warmers in my backpack near the batteries, trying to keep them warm. There's just so many little things that you don't think about when you see this polished, finished product.
The equipment is a big deal. Like every time I buy a new piece of equipment, I'm like, this is like cheating. Like every time you buy a gimbal or a drone or a camera, it's most likely better than the last one. It's way smaller, it's way lighter, and it's way cheaper.
Yeah.
And that, like, gimbals used to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Drones, like, do you remember when we shot with those drone guys from Utah? Like in the early days, there was we did this deal with some guys from Utah, and they had like a massive like octocopter drone, and
I don't know if I was there.
Yeah, it had like a kind of like a Sony mirrorless, but an early version of it. Maybe even had like a 5D on it, but it was this massive like helicopter, and they would like were really like nervous to fly it, and then we'd pull it in the backcountry in this little toboggan. And I remember like doing this like shoot with like Jay and Keith and Dan, and it was like such a nightmare. And like, I'm like, we're not doing the drone thing anymore. Like,
Yeah.
and those days, it's crazy to even say, but it was cheaper and easier to fly a heli than it was to shoot a drone, because we could get a heli in Canada. It would fly out of town, land. Mike would get in it, shoot for an hour or however many hours. You'd pay by the hour. He'd get out, and then the heli would fly off.
Yeah.
Whereas the drone, we had to like haul this massive drone in the backcountry, 2 operators, rent 2 snowmobiles for those guys. They couldn't ride. I shouldn't say they couldn't ride. They might watch this. We had challenges.
Yeah, that was my first introduction, is renting the heli, flying in, Mike jumping in. I'm like, 509's awesome. Is this what it's like every time? We're just flying helicopters in Canada, and I later found out it's not like that all the time.
Those heli shoots were legit.
Yeah.
Those were some crazy times.
I've been talking about with Borch a bit about bringing them back, maybe.
Yeah.
Of doing a Dirt Shark like Doonies like edit that we do a premiere on. Kind of the want is still there. There's some diehards that ask about a film every year.
Yeah.
There's a new film coming out. There's a new film coming out. The new eyes on the YouTube series is awesome. You're getting a totally new audience. Yeah. Usually the next generation too, younger audience. But to find the happy medium between those, I think it'd be really cool to do like a 15, 20-minute top premiere that we do that's pretty high budget, high caliber.
Yeah.
Hire out a heli and do a basically amplified heli shoot.
The thing about like helis, like you talk about riders being on or off, like when a heli's in the air, everybody's on.
The adrenaline is...
It's like they're going down. Like stuff's going to happen.
To this day, I don't think I've ever seen anything as gnarly as the heli shoots in person, where you have that many guys going that big back to back to back.
Because you only have so much time.
Yeah.
And it's just such a rad experience when that thing's flying over. Like the first year, I remember being like, that was pretty wild for sure. The second year, like Turcotte came into it and he's like, I'm gonna flip one time. And we're like, okay. So, and he's like, you guys better get the shot because I'm not doing it twice. So we like set up and he flips, and it was so stressful for everybody. But Mike was in the air and I was on the ground, so I would have to like get the shots of the helicopter and the rider, and like you can't mess it up. Like there's no second chances. And that year was cool because the heli pilot was rad. Like he almost crashed the heli. Like I remember one time there's a shot, and what I think is in the teaser where he does this like downhill turn and it kind of like drifts, and like it was super sketchy, and he was like totally willing to send it. And then Jay hit that.
The year I was with him, Jay almost hit the helicopter.
Yeah.
And he broke his nose. Remember that?
So there's the one.
He was in that gray free ride.
You're going to have to find the clips to put this story makes no sense without the footage. But like the one, there was like that downhill hip jump, and Jay comes up and he just keeps like rising to the heli, and the heli's like here, and it comes all the way up, and then like Mike's angle, like he comes up to eye level, and Mike's like, he needs to like stop coming up, he's gonna like go on the blades. And like the still, I think Jalen Reed shot the stills from the bottom, and like my video angle, it literally looks like he's higher than the heli.
Well, he almost did it again then for volume 10. Do you remember that one? There was a huge step down to like a super sniper landing.
Yeah, and
he was right there, like looking over at Mike in the air, and he OJ'd it and broke his nose. And that was, I think he had to have gone all of 175 feet on that.
Yeah.
And it was probably 150 to the correct spot.
Big stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are cool days. Like that whole experience. Helicopters are so cool.
Yeah. It's just a whole different added element of adrenaline.
The thing that's rad about helis is like pretty much anytime there's a heli in there, there's something gnarly happening. Like it could be good, it could be bad, but helis don't just fly just like cruising around. You know, like there's something going down.
Yeah.
Like, and in our case, it was big jumps and flips.
Well, even just seeing a sled getting long lined out of the backcountry in its own sense is kind of gnarly to see.
Yeah.
It's just this snowmobile hanging 100 feet below a helicopter, cruising through the backcountry and going back to town.
And in Canada, it's like kind of an everyday thing. Like in the U.S., it's a lot more challenging.
They used to have a flat rate in Revelstoke to get your sled out.
Yeah.
I think it was like a $500 flat rate.
Yeah, but you couldn't go in the helicopter, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You had to go like 2 up your way out.
Yeah.
Because remember, I think, didn't we, that shoot, when there's an ending in volume 10 where everybody's climbing up out of the bowl
Mm-hmm.
on the ridge line at the sunset. And the clip doesn't show is at the top, Regan blows his bike up. Remember this?
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure that the heli was getting the final shot, and we waved him down. Like, we were just flailing. Like, we made it clear that we weren't just like, yeah, helicopter,
Yeah.
like, rock on.
Yeah.
We're like severely flailing, and he came back and picked it up and long lined it back to town. And he, Regan, I think, rode like 2 up with Jay back, and going down in late April in anywhere in the mountains, but even more so BC. Once the evening comes around, the lower elevation stuff turns into like a slip and die.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember those two going uncontrollably fast downhill, and I was behind them and just seeing pine boughs going flying everywhere because Jay's just mowing through trees trying to slow down. He's hitting them on purpose because I think he was in reverse and hitting trees. But yeah, that's the stuff that's the cool part now is that type of stuff we can document like on a YouTube series.
Right.
And see that shenanigans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have had a few interesting times with Jay over the years.
Yeah.
Well, Jay had this thing, and we didn't really figure this out till it was too late, but the free rides had like a better like axle driver setup than Summits, and he would like land on the gas and he would spin the drivers on the drive shaft. So that happened once in Whistler, and our solution was we went and got like a bunch of screws, kind of like the screws we're using in this shop, like self-tappers, and we'd drill through it because it was like, it would just like spin. And we got it out that time. And then, but some 2-upping. I don't remember 2-upping being too bad. But then that happened another time at Sheep Creek, and we had to 2-up in and out, and the whole deal again.
Yeah. You had that Top Gear bolt shear off on that Pro that one year.
Yeah.
And that got long lined out too, didn't it?
Yeah, that got long.
Yeah, we've long lined a bunch of stuff out.
That's the only time in my life where the snowmobile braking actually helped me, because then I just flew in the heli all weekend.
Oh, you did?
That was sweet. I didn't really snowmobile.
Yeah, they dropped you off up there for filming.
Yeah, I just fly up in the heli.
Man.
That was some service.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story in itself.
Yeah. Lunch would get delivered up on the mountain by the heli. Yeah, we were balling. What happened?
There might be a Netflix series about that fella.
That's a story for a different time. I actually told that story on Sea Boys on their podcast.
Okay.
And then by the end of it, I said, you can't air this. And then Ryan was like, yeah, you're right. I can't for your own safety.
Yeah.
And now I'm leaving all the listeners with a massive cliffhanger. I think give it like a few more years.
I would say watch Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah.
And imagine a snowmobile version of Leonardo DiCaprio that wanted to come hang out with us idiots.
Yeah. Steven and I will revisit that story in a few years when we are for sure safe.
We're going to sell the rights to Netflix and make a documentary.
Yeah. This is just mean to the listeners. Nobody knows what the hell we're talking about.
Oh, good times.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to... Steven, bless your heart. I love you dearly. You're like my father figure in the snowmobile industry. I take advice from you more than anybody. But we... collectively, not you, we as a team of riders and myself have pissed you off over the years, and you don't think it's funny at the time, and I'm so sorry because we probably amplify it because you got some great one-liners that only come out when you're mad. And
I get a little stressed snowmobiling. So there's two Stevens when it comes to snowmobiling. So if I go snowmobile with my buddies, I'm like all about it. I'm going to go like have a good time. Not ride at a super high level, but like decent. When I'm working, I have a heavy backpack. I'm not thinking really about snowmobiling. I'm like thinking about like what I'm going to shoot next. And I'm just trying to like survive it, which is tricky when you're with like some of the best riders in the world. Like just getting there is like half the battle.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's been some helmet throwing incidents over the years, backpacks getting hucked.
And I don't regret any of them because you come around eventually, you calm down, and then I look back at it and it's still funny.
Yeah, I need to work on that.
Steven's catchphrase catchphrase in Scottish. I know it's not a language, but it's "gosh damn it." And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, he's going. He's getting going. This is just the start.
Too much.
Yeah, we got you kind of going this, I think it was last year. Maybe.
No, it was that
2 years
day
ago.
with like you and Jay and Blaine
And
going
you,
through all those stupid trees,
and you asked,
going nowhere.
You asked where we were, and we were the only tracks in the zone, and I think that's what we found funny, which didn't help the situation for you, because we answer on the radios as kind of smart asses, like the only tracks in here, which then set you off. And I just remember Jay and I going, we should sit up here for a little while.
Well, and it wasn't like we needed to go through there to get to where we were going.
No.
You guys just wanted to go to like worse terrain.
I was following them, for the record. I was third in line.
Yeah.
And then I noticed you weren't there anymore, and things were rapidly.
You should hear Tony's side of a lot of these stories. He's like a professional bad decision maker.
Jenkins?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Every time. Just.
He is one of the guys I see the most frequently on Instagram stories, like riding out at night, or somebody's like in the water, or.
Oh, he's terrible.
Yeah. They're always in some sort of shithole, to say the
Oh,
least.
it's just a disaster every time.
Yeah,
He doesn't learn.
Sounds pretty fun.
We've had some good times.
Speaking of that, you and I were both lucky enough to spend a large chunk of time with Rob Kincaid over the years.
Yeah.
And Rob was, I see a little of you, or Rob and you.
See, Rob was all about like doing that stuff too, but he was cool enough to like come and pull on a ski and give you a pat on the back. Be like, oh, you're doing good, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, he would tear you down, but then he'd rebuttal with a
he kind of
compliment.
build you back up a bit.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, I'll go back for more.
Yeah.
Don't leave completely pissed.
I think, some of my favorite times ever on a snowmobile were with Rob. I mean, I wish we would have like literally written down some of the quotes he had.
Oh,
Because
man.
he came up with things that I've never heard before in my life. Like a whole book worth of one-liners that I've never heard before. And they all made sense.
And Rob would like always like take my picture. That was like the coolest thing. Like we'd like go filming for the day, and then Rob kind of like fancied himself as a bit of a photographer. So like at the end of the day, he'd be like, "Give me that camera," and then he would be try to do like the most like challenging shots. He'd be like, oh, "I got these like trees in the foreground," and then they'd just be like focused on the tree, and I'm like, "Okay, like let's like stay on the bunny hill for a little bit, like just like get the snowmobile in the frame." But he was like super cool about it, and I honestly think, like, if Rob was still around, he'd probably would be like into like maybe not filming. I don't know if he has the would have had the patience for that.
Yeah.
But he was getting kind of like an eye for photography and like kind of getting into it.
His daughter shoots quite a bit of photos, doesn't she? Some pretty good photos.
Yeah, she was. I don't know if she still is, but she was kind of into it.
When did you first meet those two? Was it together? Was it Rob and Dave from the get-go, or was it individually?
It was kind of like the start of the Rob and Dave duo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of good times. A lot of stuff in the summer. Like we got started riding dirt bikes, and we do these like Black Wednesday rides, and Rob was kind of like the ringleader. And man, we had some real, it was a mess. We spent the night.
Yeah.
Guy broke his ankle or leg, and then we spent the night, and like it was just.
Now, was it mountain biking or dirt biking that Rob was new to?
So he dirt biked for a long time, and then he was pretty good at it. But he had this old YZ450, which I think it had 4 gears, which would be. Can you imagine riding a 4-speed supercross bike on trails? So he did it, and then we got into like doing racing. So we'd go race Idaho City, and then Rob like started taking it serious. So he got this like new Beta, and he was like real hot. Like I'm a racer. And I remember on the way there, he had tubeless tires, and he's like, "Oh, I'm pumped. I've got tubeless. I can't get a flat." And we're in the truck. We're like, "Rob, you can still get a flat." He's like, "No, Dave, like they're tubeless. You can't get a flat." And we're like, "That's not how that works, Rob. They still have air in them. You can get a flat." And he got 2 flats. And he was so determined to like finish with 2 flats. I think it's probably the funniest like I'd ever saw Rob. And he was so smoked. Like laying on the ground, groaning, like couldn't get off the toilet for like a week. And that was like a big motivator. He was like, this is not happening again.
Yeah.
So then he got into like mountain biking, and then it was like game on. Like Rob quickly became like a very good mountain biker. Like he was like doing these cross country races. And then the next year, me and Rob went back to Idaho City, and like I was not near as serious as Rob, but I trained hard. We both got golds. We rode together, and that was really cool.
That's what I was getting at is when Rob wasn't at a level that he was satisfied with, he would like fully dive into something and figure it out. Because I remember when he was getting into the mountain biking thing, and he was like just dove in head first. Like he was like biking 30 miles a day for a while there, just determined. The main thing I think was just like determined to beat Dave at the end of the day.
But Dave like kind of gave up on the mountain biking. Like the dirt biking, Dave was there.
Because of that, because then I remember Rob being like, yeah, look, Dave's a quitter, and I'm over here like I'm getting better and better every day.
Yeah. Well, like, because cycling, like I've done a lot of cycling, and like you for sure have to be in shape. But a big part of cycling is just enduring pain. And I think Rob could endure a lot of pain. Like he would just like muscle through it and just make it happen. So
except for that time at Grand Targhee.
Yeah, he had some.
That might have been his breaking point when we watched him smoke that tree on the race course.
Yeah, flat out on like a 6 improver.
Yeah, that was brutal. Ooh.
There was never a dull moment with Rob. Like it was just like full on every day.
Yeah.
Like, and it was weird when he passed away, like, and I started like looking through pictures and phone pictures, and like I hung out with Rob a lot, but I hung out with a lot of other guys too. I had like 10 times the pictures and video clips of Rob as I did anybody else, because there was just always something happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just always like doing something silly or dumb or cool or like.
Yeah, I wish you were along for the trips to Japan and Sweden with him.
I could only imagine
like,
Rob.
I just remember being there thinking like Steven's the missing link right now, because I felt like when we were all together, because obviously they both have other friends, you know, and other power sports friends, but the way you and I and all of them kind of meshed with the filmer thing, the filming side of it, I feel like when we were together, they were at their peak of just ridiculousness.
Oh yeah.
And man, I look back and wish that you were able to come along on those, because that would have just pushed them even further to be just as goofy as possible.
I just would love to have seen Rob in another country. Like, I can only
oh my gosh, yeah, he's scary enough just walking in his own state.
It bums me out a lot because the shop we're sitting in now is like less than a mile away from where Rob's shop was. So the riding zones that we'll ride from here are all the same. All the riding spots Rob showed me, and the dirt bike and Rob showed me, and like it sucks that like he's not here, because we would have had like a ball. Like just like
he knows the zones in this area.
Oh man, somebody said at his funeral, they were like, there is not a single mountaintop or creek bottom in this area that Rob hasn't been in at some point.
Yeah.
And probably upside down on a snowmobile.
Oh yeah, that was my favorite part of Rob. At the end of the day, is he wasn't like that great of a snowmobiler sometimes.
I remember the Fox party, like he was like arguing with Turcotte. Him and Turcotte had some like disagreement, and he's like saying to Turcotte, he's like, I never claimed to be a good snowmobiler. I'm just a nice guy. Turcotte's like, okay.
He wasn't wrong. Yeah, he held his own for sure, but what he didn't have on the sled, he made up for in personality.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those two would have thrived on YouTube.
Yeah, we really should have got on that more. They did quite a bit of that stuff. Like Kat did some stuff in Motorfest. And
we should, now that I'm talking about this, we should get together and go through all of our footage and compile something fun again. Like the segment we did for Volume 15.
Yeah.
That was super cool, but more of just a raw of, we have so much unseen footage.
Oh yeah.
That is just like stand-up comedy worthy.
You've seen the clip of Rob on top of the ridge when we left him.
Oh yeah, some of that you can't air.
That's like legendary.
Yeah, that's like past the point of rated R. Some of that might just be for our memory bank.
I think Snow West like posted it. Like if you like Venmo Ryan Harris like $10 or no, buy a T-shirt, buy a Snow West T-shirt. I bet you Ryan Harris will send you the link. It's like unlisted.
We should at least edit it a little bit. Maybe throw a couple bleeps in there. But
Rob was that year, he was like super wound up because it was X Games Hillcross, and Dave got an invite and Rob didn't. So Rob was like pissed. And then we went on this big ride behind Dave's house, and it was Dave, Hockey Puck, me, and Rob, and we left Rob. Rob was like hung up, and I was like just trying to survive. 'Cause I have this thing on rides, like you got to stay on the podium. Like at all times, be on the podium. Because if you're worse than P3, you're done. Because you're back there pulling on skis, and it's just a mess. So dirt bikes or snowmobiles, whenever possible, be on the podium. So I like saw that as a, like Rob was stuck. I'm like, I'm getting on the podium. He'll figure it out. So we get up to the top of the ridge, and we sit there forever. And Dave knew Rob well enough. He's like, Steven, get your camera out. This is going to be good. Okay. So I like to stand there with this like 5D, and Rob comes and just goes off. Like,
Yeah. There's that one part in that clip you're talking about where you ask Rob, he's like, did you need help when I came through there? And Rob's like, yeah, you mean when I said, hey, Steven, stop, I need some help. And he's like, yeah, I still need some damn help.
It's like, we're not all going to X Games, Dave.
Yeah.
Dave was building his house at that time. You could see it from the ridge. He's like, should we go over here see my house? He's like, I want to see your house. Easter Bunny will be lucky to see that thing. Like, how do you come up with that? Like
I said, full of one-liners.
Oh, yeah, it was, yep.
Good times.
A lot of good times over the years.
Present day has been pretty wild in general. The transition to YouTube for not only myself, but you. I don't know if many people know, but I know a lot of, just looking at the analytics, a lot of our viewers, I think it's like the top 3 of videos are coming from Dan Adams' channel.
Yeah.
Which you shoot and produce the stuff for Dan Adams.
Yeah.
He's the man behind the lens on that channel. And that's been a shift in the last really 2 years.
Yeah.
From the film side to the YouTube side.
Yeah, it's weird because we always did put stuff on YouTube for forever, like almost back to the early 509 days, but it was never really like a thing.
Or
like
series or...
Yeah. But the last few years, it's kind of taken off, and it's been really cool. Yeah, the Dan stuff is fun because I like legitimately believe we're helping snowmobilers with that. Like people are becoming better riders, are becoming safer, they're becoming more avalanche aware, and that's really cool for sure. And then also the other side of like the vlog stuff and more kind of behind the scenes, kind of immersed in it. But yeah, it's different. Like I look at my kids and they like live on YouTube, and like it's weird to think that in the future, like my kids' generation, they're 5 and 6. Like there's no Tom Cruise or like Clint Eastwood. It's like the movie stars of their generation will be YouTubers.
Right.
So it's like, it's cool. It's cool. It gives everybody like an outlet to tell their story, do what they're doing.
Do you think history will ever repeat itself in the film era, circle back?
Yeah, I would like to believe it would. What I don't like about current content, any type of media content, is there's no like shelf life of it. There's no like legendary pictures that are like thousands of or millions of prints are made of, and coffee table books are made of, or like that one movie that you rewatch numerous times. Like it's kind of this like here today, gone tomorrow, and it's sort of just like this constant stream of content. There's nothing that really stands out over time, you know? Whereas like movies were that way, and magazines were that way, books, and
even up until the last 5-6 years, because I remember getting a bunch of my photos published in was it Mountain Sledder magazine used to do the photo annual?
Yeah.
And we did I think it was volume 10 during the heli shoot.
Yeah.
It was you, myself, I think it was just you and me, our photos.
Yeah.
Did like a 6-page feature in there.
Sure.
And I still have that, and it's like one of the coolest things that I'm still like the most proud of. And it's
your mom probably has one on her coffee table. Like your mom doesn't like probably show her friends like your Instagram post.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
and it's almost kind of all of a sudden just a flip of a switch, like old fashioned now.
Yeah.
Like it's a relic. Like I'd eventually want to like frame it or something to like my favorite page, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But you can't frame a Instagram post, your favorite YouTube video, whatever, right?
Yeah.
You got to either have it on a hard drive or go onto YouTube and find it and rewatch it. There's not that kind of legacy that lives on with it.
For sure.
And that is bizarre.
Yeah, it's really changed. Like in a way, I'm super thankful. Like I feel like in my career, even though relatively it's pretty short, there's been such a drastic change in media. Like this is like, there'll be textbooks written about like this era. Like it went from magazines and TV and movies to social media. And like, this has been this massive change. The cameras have changed like drastically. Like it's cool in a way. It's a little challenging to like keep up with. And I think 509 has done an awesome job on that. And it's like always been on like kind of the forefront of like, what's the next big thing? You know, it's like Facebook was the big thing and Instagram and TikTok. Or
do you ever think we'd be sitting here doing a podcast for 509 6-7 years ago?
I
Even
didn't even know what a podcast
Same.
was.
Yeah.
That wasn't a thing. This is new.
Now here we are in the bandwagon.
Yeah, just figuring it out.
As Steven would say, chasing clout.
Yeah. What if nobody watches this?
We get pretty steady downloads.
People watch it.
Yeah. You're going to up those Instagram followers. I know that's all.
Shout out. I don't think I have enough followers on Instagram to even do like a link. A link.
I think you have 10K.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you know somebody that could like...
You could buy some. Fake it till you make it.
Shout out.
Yeah. I mean, we could shout you out here for the next 20 minutes and just talk about reasons why you should follow Steven on Instagram.
I should probably post things.
Yeah, I know. When you post quality, though. Quality over quantity.
I've always been really bad at like self-marketing.
Yeah.
My whole strategy has always been like relationships.
Which has worked out great for you. The self-marketing thing is kind of fun. I mean, for me, it's weird because I don't really give a shit about if people know who I am. It's more like giving back to the fan base, primarily through 509, right? At the end of the day, my personal Instagram is directly associated with 509 basically. But it's like the behind the scenes look of all this. That's kind of the main thing is because I remember when we'd watch, here's a really good example. The credits on sled films were almost like my favorite because you got to see that, like, or maybe you recognized a jump that you just saw earlier in the film, but you get to see the guy standing there shoveling it or their opinion on how the jump looks, and you see the guy with the tripod set up.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm like kind of trying to revive that through my Instagram stories for people.
Right. So they can follow along.
Yeah, and then 2 weeks later, week later, the YouTube video comes out, but you kind of got a little stoked and So I don't know. That's where I kind of feel like
I think it's awesome. I just probably, I don't know. Yeah, well, it's weird too because a lot of stuff that I shoot these days, like I can't. Like,
you got
share
some big
them.
deals.
Yeah, because it's like embargoed snowmobiles or like, and even if they're not embargoed snowmobiles, like maybe somebody like Polaris doesn't want you telling people where you are, or like you might hurt somebody's feelings or like show something you shouldn't. So for me and the way that I run my business, like the risk versus reward isn't there. It's like not worth the risk. Whereas, because my business marketing, like I try to do more stuff through like LinkedIn and things like that, where I'm like reaching the people that will actually like hire me to do things. Whereas it's harder. I don't see that like somebody's going to see a cool picture on Instagram and be like, oh, who took that? Oh, that guy took it. I'm going to go call him. Like
7, 8 years ago. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. And it's different. Like at people that are at different levels of their career, like if I was starting out fresh today, I'd be like all about it.
Yeah.
But like, I don't feel like
you got totally different clientele. You're associated with numerous people. I'm really tied to one brand.
Right. Yeah.
But I do notice when you and I get together, you got the most stories going of your whole winter because I'm like, look at Steven doing something funny over here. Tag him.
I can just share yours. Yeah. That's perfect. Then it's
like
on you.
Yesterday we rode dirt bikes and all of a sudden Steven's story's firing again.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Mine's, yours is really nice. I don't know if for you guys listening, our dirt bikes are sitting behind here in this frame and we have the same bike. Mine just looks like it got tied up by a rope behind a pickup truck on the highway.
Well, you got to keep the rubber side down.
Not my expertise yet.
Yeah, you got to keep it down. Maybe clean it a little bit. A little bit of maintenance would go a long way on that
This
thing.
isn't going to be the best thing for when I post this for sale.
Right.
After people have listened to this. I'll put some elbow grease and clean her up.
No, dirt bikes are fun. That's kind of my thing.
Yeah, you're a big bike guy. You've done some insane rides, like right on the verge of torture.
We've done some, over the years.
Which one was the worst? The Tour of Idaho?
Tour of Idaho was really tough.
So break that down for people who have no idea what it is.
So we started on the Utah border in southern Idaho, and we rode basically single track the entire way to almost to Canada, like right up your neck of the woods. It was 10 days, and it was like sun up to sundown.
How many miles?
Every day. 1,300 or something.
Of pretty much fire roads and single track?
Yeah, mostly single track. Little bits of fire roads. With me, Tony Jenkins, and Jesse Ziegler. So that was a tough one. That was a grind.
Yeah, it's kind of type 2 fun.
Type 2 fun for sure.
Yeah.
But it was awesome. We like literally saw the whole of Idaho.
Yeah.
In 10 days.
That's I've seen stretch. I've looked at the map, and every now and then I'll end up somewhere on a stretch of it. Yeah. And I think about you guys. Yeah. I'm like, oh, Steven's been through here, but he probably has no recollection of it because he was just survival mode at that point.
Just going, yeah. Yeah, we that was a long week for sure, but super cool. Yeah, super thankful to have done that. I always like to do so I did some work for Climb for a couple of years, and when our kids were born, and then coming out of that, I was like, I'm gonna have more fun. So like winters are a grind, like we work our butt off all winter, but every summer I'm like, I've got a project. So like we're doing one thing. So we did Tour of Idaho, and then we did one year went to France and did a stage of the Tour de France road bike ride, and then we did the Rubicon Jeep Trail, and then this year we've been building the shop. That's been the project.
Yeah.
So it's a little different type of fun.
You guys are super good at getting your whole family together and doing really cool stuff. Like your kids are living the life whether they know it or not. Now I know one day they'll definitely, not saying they don't appreciate it. I mean, they're just young.
They've never been to Disneyland, but they've been over 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah. Which is cool. Awesome. Camping trips you just went to Mexico with them, and that's just, I mean, you're a product of your environment. You're surrounded by good people. You're in an industry that's passionate about adventure and whatever it may be. And I think that's rubbed off on how you've raised your kids.
Yeah. I'm super thankful that we're like in a position to be able to do that stuff with the kids and share those adventures. And we're pretty good life for sure.
I know your 6-year-old is not going to be listening to this, so we could talk about that. You just got her a 200, a little snowmobile.
Yeah.
From the reactions I've seen from her on even just pedaling around on a bike, she's going to be stoked.
Yeah, I'm super pumped. So I bought Chris Brandt's daughter's snowmobile, the 200, so super thankful to the Brandt family, and then so now it's in the Clark family, and Charlotte's going to ride it, and we'll see where that goes. She's an awesome bicycle rider, and she loves riding dirt bikes, so we'll get her on the snowmobile and try and ignite that passion.
Steven, before we wrap things up, I know you've really opened up your filming career to not just snowmobiling, but it kind of started with sledding. That was kind of your introduction to power sports side. Obviously, you did some stuff in the diesel world of trucks and everything, but you got a cool example or story of not just pigeonholing yourself in one industry. Like, you love snowmobiling.
Yeah.
That's definitely where people know you the most as far as what your expertise is on the film side.
Yeah.
But you've been able to branch out to the truck world, the off-road world. I mean, you've done commercial stuff on the East Coast. You've done a little bit of everything.
I'm really good at like ruining hobbies. You're like, I always like to get into different things, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get into like, I don't know, like dirt bikes, and you like start shooting dirt bikes at once, and then it like kind of, it's hard to have that differentiation between like work and play. And sometimes like, and I know people that I've talked to people in the past that are like, oh, I've always like this one hobby, I just do that, and I've never worked in that business, and I've been really bad at that. I've always like sort of ended up like shooting that stuff, but it's hard because you get exposed to like cool stuff, and then you're like we did a bunch of stuff with Fox for a few years, and it was like we were shooting Jeeps, and it's like, wow, this is cool, we'll buy a Jeep, and then next thing you know, you got like a big fancy Jeep, and you're going Jeep trips everywhere, and like it all started from going on a photo shoot. But that's the cool thing about like filming and photography is like you're always doing, for the most part, you're doing cool stuff. Like you're in really cool terrain. Most often like the best terrain for whatever it is you're shooting. You're with like the best riders on like the best equipment, because nobody hires you to go shooting some crappy place with a guy that can't ride on an old vehicle.
Right.
So you're always exposed to those. And it's been really cool because you meet so many, like, I will call them like high performance humans, like these like athletes, like across all these different disciplines. Like they're highly performing people. Like they're not watching much Netflix and not drinking too much beer. They're like up at 6 a.m. working out, like still years into it. Like, I mean, I go travel with Dan, and I did a shoot with Dan last year. We're like in Minneapolis, and we had to get up at we had to be in the lobby at 5:30, and I'm like sharing a room with Dan, and he gets up at like 4 a.m. and goes running in the dark in Minneapolis in December. I'm like, dude, and he's not like training to race or has a big thing. It's just like what he does. Like, and it's like, it's cool to be around those people because it kind of like rubs off on you. You're like, all right, well, we're probably not going to be like drinking beer and eating chips at the Mexican restaurant. Like, and that's been a really positive influence in my life, like being around all these athletes, and just pushes you. Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of reoccurring themes throughout it, which is the neat part. Yeah, I've chatted with you a lot about your travels, and at the end of the day, it all kind of feels like home in a way, at least if it's power sports or action sports, right? There's still kind of that underlying passion that everybody relates to. For sure. So when you get onto a gig like that, it's not completely foreign to you. Yeah. You know, there's still that common bond that no matter what discipline it is, you can kind of fit in or feel, you know, have an understanding of it. Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, I should give a shout out all to like the wives and the moms out there. Like, because I don't know if we fully appreciate that. I think we take that for granted. Like, none of these guys are like performing at a high level without like a solid support system behind them. And if that's like family, friends, wives, kids, like they have all that stuff like covered. Like that stuff's like usually pretty dialed. Yeah. So from there they concentrate on everything else to make them better. Like you're not going to go win races if you're like getting a divorce from your wife and going to the bar every night. Like it's not going to happen. Like, I mean, I shouldn't say never, but like it's rare. Very rare. Like you've got to have your bases dialed. And I think that's the cool thing about the people that I get exposed to is they've got their crap together. Like they have a solid foundation that they're working off of, and they're like really good people, and they're performing at a high level. Yeah. You're just like-minded individuals right off the bat. So you have that common understanding, and you know, you can strike up a conversation like you've known somebody in a totally different industry that you've never been in. You feel like you've known them for years right off the bat, just because of that one, you know, some key foundational parts of their life. Yeah. I did have a fun experience this year. I don't think Ricky Carmichael will watch this podcast, but we did a shoot with Carmichael, and that was really fun because like I was a big Carmichael fan as a kid. Side note, if Ricky watches this, reach out to me. We can do a podcast anytime. I'll drop whatever. Right. Well, we'll get you some goggles. The whole deal. Yeah. So we did a shoot with Ricky, and it's like, this is like surreal because I'm like, he was like my childhood hero, and now I'm like getting a paycheck to go take his picture. And that was super cool. And like I did a ride with Chad Reed a few years ago. That was really cool too. But the thing about those guys is that they're obviously extremely high level athletes, but they've raced on like tracks their whole life, and they're like in this like closed course environment where they've got like a support system, medical, mechanics, stuff like that. And you take them out in the mountains, and it's like a different deal. Like they're like we were in Colorado with Ricky in August at like 13,000 feet on adventure bikes, and it's like raining and cold, and guys are frying clutches, and they're all freaking out, like super stressed. And like we had headsets on like this. I was in a Jeep, and I could hear them all talking, and it's like, I'm like, this guy was the best in the world at something, and now he's like really struggling in a totally foreign environment. And it's like, that's kind of cool to see that, you know, this is different. It's a level playing field at some point. Right. Yeah, for sure. Because the mountains are like, they're different for sure. I bet that moment you were thinking, because you've ridden quite a bit of adventure bikes, you were probably thinking, I might be better at than Ricky Carmichael at one thing. Possible. Yeah. But, no, that's a cool thing about the mountains too. Like areas that we're in right now, like in Teton Valley, like, and Rob was the king of that. Like these guys that were born and raised in the mountains, and they're like hunting, dirt biking, mountain biking, snowmobiling, and they're like really damn good at it. Like they just like get it. Like there's kids in Star Valley that nobody's ever even heard of that were shred.
Yeah.
Better riders than like some kid that's got 20,000 followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
Bunch of pro deals.
But they don't care. They just want to ride to have fun, which I respect the hell out of that.
For sure. And they just really understand the environment. They just really know what they're doing. They've been doing it since kids. So
yeah, they're dang it. I grew up in the flatlands.
You figured it out though.
Oh, it took a while, Steven. You know that. You dealt with some BS from me, that's for sure.
You've come a long way. For sure.
I had no choice. Otherwise, I wasn't going to have a job.
It's kind of feast or famine. You figure it out or you pack your bags and go home.
Well, thank you, Steven. I've been wanting to get you on here for a long time. Like I said, I can't thank you enough for all the help you've given me over the years.
Yeah.
You really kind of paved the way for me in a sense. Appreciate the hell everything you've done. You have anything else you want to plug or?
No, thank you. I really appreciate having me on here. I mean, like the 509 has been a really exciting part of my career, and we still film together. It's super cool to continue that. And yeah, can we plug the shop?
I was going to plug the Instagram for Steven so we can get you that 10K. I had to double check here. It is Steven with a PH. Steven W. Clark 27.
27, yeah.
On Instagram. And we got to get it just get 10K so when I put this podcast out, he can share the link.
Share the link. Yeah. Did I get that little blue check mark?
Oh God, no.
No, how do you get that?
You basically got to get to a point of fame where people are making enough fake profiles of you.
Could I make those myself?
I see. I've thought about that. I've thought the same thing too. And then you need to request through Instagram. And then they have to have be able to search you and see that there's fake profiles.
Right. Okay.
So if we team up together,
right, I'll do a bunch for you. You do a bunch for me. Yeah. We'll try and get a check mark. Yeah. Does anybody in the snowmobile industry have a check mark?
Turcotte and Barant, I think.
Barant. Okay.
Yeah.
That's something to shoot for.
Yeah.
509 have one?
No, I gotta send in the UBI and number and
paperwork.
All that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll get there.
Yeah.
And this shop, Steven, I know it's not done yet, but eventually. Can we talk about that really quickly?
Let's talk about shop,
Eventually, this is going to be one of the sickest in the area. VRBO, rentals, Airbnb, whatever you want to call it. Rentals, no matter either way.
Well, the whole deal with the shop is like we travel all over shooting and we get Airbnbs. And every time you go and you get this expensive Airbnb. It's this massive like cabin. It's got like log fireplace and big rooms, all this stuff. There's nowhere to park a trailer. There's nowhere to like work on snowmobiles or put your stuff.
And there's no damn hooks on the walls everywhere.
There's never hooks. There's no boot dryers. Yeah. And you can't turn around the driveway. And you're paying for this big house that you don't really need. And I'm like, well, if you're in a rad area, all you got to do is really sleep and keep your stuff running. So I'm like, let's just build a shop and we'll put an apartment in the back and you can sleep there. We'll have a hot tub. I mean, it'll be nice.
Yeah.
And then we've got the shop area and then we can snowmobile right from here. And then dirt bike in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we're going to hopefully have this done early winter. Maybe we'll get you guys back. We'll shoot some stuff here.
I think we'll definitely get the team together here and ride out of here and do some content. I mean, even outside of the backyard, you got numerous zones to unload at within 20 minutes. It's a pretty cool spot. So when this comes out, if you guys give Steven a follow, I'm sure he'll make a big post about it. It's going to be a destination here. It's in Driggs, Idaho.
Teton Base Camp,
tentatively named. Don't Google that yet because nothing will show up.
I registered the domain already.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we're on it.
Okay.
We're committed.
All right.
I've been thinking about it all summer, and then finally I'm like, you know what, just do it. Good or bad, we're running with it.
All right. Well, you asked me my opinion on it yesterday.
You didn't like it for some business thing.
You didn't tell me that you already had got the domain. Well, so my opinion did not matter.
Well, that was right before I think I clicked buy like right when you went to the bathroom or something.
Okay. All right. Well, Steven, it's been a joy. I'm sure we'll get you on again in the future, but thanks for taking the time, buddy, to do this finally.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Awesome. If you guys are watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. It's fun reading those. We appreciate it. I keep an eye on all of them. Obviously, like the post, subscribe if you want to see more. We're going to start up the YouTube series, the video series, hopefully in the next month or two here, depending on Mother Nature. If you're on Spotify or Apple, leave us a review. Those help a ton, and appreciate the hell out of all you guys for listening. It's going up and up every episode, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.